Hi, it's Penny here. So this is going to be my Q2 reading wrap-up where I will go through some of the best books I read in the last quarter, as well as some of the worst books that I read in the quarter. And then as well, I'll check in on my reading goals and how we're going, and as part of that, probably look at some statistics and some lovely graphs. And this is a little bit late. I'm probably going to be, throughout this, using as an excuse or a reason the fact that we were moving at the end of the quarter and everything kind of was a disaster, but also was great because now we're in a new house. Anyway, let's start by talking about the best books that I read in the quarter. Firstly, one that I had been putting off for ages for no good reason is the Murderbot books by Martha Wells. So I read 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then I think also a couple of short stories, and I really loved them. This should not be a surprise because Murderbot is so popular. It's following this security bot who has hacked their governor module mainly so that they can just watch TV, but unfortunately they also have to do their job and perform security for these humans who always seem to be getting in trouble. And it's really great seeing kind of the relationships that form between Murderbot and these humans, even though Murderbot is very resistant to doing anything other than just watching TV. And I think actually what I really love about the Murderbot books is this artificial intelligence really like seeking their purpose and trying to understand their purpose in the world. And the writing tone is just amazing. The way that Murderbot is just so sarcastic and cynical about so many things, but also really like caring and thoughtful and protective. The tone is amazing. I really loved it, and I am looking forward to continuing that series in the next quarter. Another book that I did quite like is When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. So this one I mainly picked up because of the beautiful cover, but I did also think it had a really beautiful inside. We're following this guy who is trying to track down a magical artifact for purposes that become clear throughout the book. I actually find it really hard to talk about the plot of this one because so much of it is spoilers. And in a lot of ways there isn't that much plot, although there are some nice twists and turns along the way. It is more of a story about these different characters in this world where the supernatural is modeled on Polish mythology. We've got a lot of vampire type creatures that feed on emotions, which links in really well to like the emotional journeys of the characters, and the writing is really atmospheric in a way that I did think mostly fit the story quite well. The only thing I did find is there were a few bits where there's quite a bit of action and I didn't feel the writing style fit as well for that part of the story, and I was sometimes confused about what was going on because of that. And I almost wish this book had been a little bit longer just so we could get more character development and a little bit more of an explanation of the plot, although it was kind of the mystery that added to the atmosphere. So I think if you like more atmospheric or character focused stories, this is one you would really, really love. I just had a good time with it, but maybe it won't be a long time favorite for me, but I can see a lot of people loving it even more. And then as well in this quarter I started the Age of Madness trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. So this is the second trilogy in the First Law world. I really loved the First Law trilogy, and I kind of think that's making it hard for me to love this trilogy. Like if I had just picked this up without having loved that first one, maybe I would have liked this better. But with this second trilogy I am just a little bit disappointed in the lack of magic, and I almost feel like our characters just aren't as morally grey. Like they're almost too likable. Joe Abercrombie is great at writing really likable characters, but maybe these are too likable. So this is kind of set in a industrial revolution fantasy world where there's a bunch of empires and countries at war, and we're just following a bunch of characters trying to survive the political drama. I love Joe Abercrombie's writing, so even though I'm not completely connecting to the characters and I do wish there was more magic, I still think these are brilliantly written. I've read the first 2 books in the trilogy. I've still got to do the third one. I'm hoping the ending will blow me away, and I'm also secretly hoping, well, not secretly because I'm telling you, but I'm hoping for just a little bit of magic. Come on, Joe, just give me a little bit. I know there's magic in this world and I love the magic in the world, the way that it's so magical, but I need more. Oh, so actually, I am grouping these by things that I read in text. Like, I always struggle to say, like things I read as physical or ebooks, reading all the words, and there's no pictures in these books. So those ones first. Then I also had a couple of really great audiobooks. Firstly, I read the Soldier Sun trilogy by Robin Hobb. This is a trilogy that's separate from her Realm of Elderlings series, and it has much lower average ratings on Goodreads, but I personally really loved it. Maybe not as much of the Realm of the Elderlings, but very close. It's in like a alternate colonial America, like fantastical colonial America type thing. Like the countries are called different things, but you can tell it's similar. So we follow this boy named Navarre, who is from like the colonizing people, and then we also have these native people who have different magical abilities, and Navarre kind of finds himself stuck in the middle between all these different people, and both their like physical conflicts as well as the magical conflicts that are going on. And I just really loved the themes that Robin Hobb was exploring in this series, as well as she still has like the tragic main character who's going through some really hard times. Especially I think the second book was the one where Navarre was just, every time he would get his life back together, it would be torn apart again, and it was heartbreaking. But it also really looks at like what happens when these different cultures come together and have completely different ways of understanding things. And also I think a lot about the lack of control that an individual can feel in that kind of situation. So even though I have seen some critiques for that trilogy, I really loved it. As well, I have started the Innkeeper Chronicles by Ilona Andrews. So Ilona Andrews is a favorite author for me, so it isn't a surprise that I'm really loving this series. I think I've read the first 2 books. We follow this young woman named Dina who runs an inn, but in this world it's kind of like a fantasy sci-fi type world. So all the supernatural creatures in this world are actually aliens, and when they come to Earth being a very important place that people stop by when they're traveling. So when they come to Earth, they stay in these inns, and the idea is that humans, regular humans, aren't allowed to know about these supernatural creatures, and also the supernatural creatures kind of need to be kept safe from whatever's going on Earth, and that's the innkeeper's jobs. And Dina is both trying to start her own inn and build up her inn's reputation, as well as trying to find out what happened with her parents. We haven't in the first 2 books gone very far with that mystery, but I expect it's going to be important for the bigger, broader story. So these books are just really fast-paced. There's a fair amount of action, a lot of magic, which I really like. Also a lot of humor, which you wouldn't expect me to like because I often critique books on being too humorous, but I do like the humor in the Age of Madness, and I do like the humor in the Innkeeper Chronicles. I love the way that Ilona Andrews writes characters, and the way they're so clever with the way they'll have a bunch of different plot threads going on and have it all come together at the end. And maybe these books don't have too many deeper themes, but they're a lot of fun, and I'm just having a lot of fun with the series. Then lastly, we have my favorite graphic books of the quarter, and a lot of these were rereads. So I did reread Lock and Key, as well as Lightfall and Monstrous. I will say both Lightfall and Monstrous, I also read the latest new releases in those series, and I think for both, the newest releases were probably my least favorite of the series. But Lightfall was a lot more positive. I don't know if I want to go into all of these because we'll probably be here forever, but Lightfall is this really adorable graphic novel series, kind of very Labyrinth and Dark Crystal-esque. We have a couple of characters going on this big quest as the sun of the world is at risk. And in the third book, we did learn a lot about kind of the history of the world, which I did really like. Then as well, I did pick up volumes 2 and 3 of Bug Boys, which I think I mentioned in Q1. It's just this adorable comic series about these really cute little bugs having adventures, and I love them. So unsurprisingly, I love volumes 2 and 3. And then the only other thing I did want to mention is The Sleeper and the Spindle, which is by Neil Gaiman, and I've forgotten who the illustrator is. Chris Riddle? Maybe. I'll put the picture on screen, obviously. I did actually read this with my eyes, but also with my ears. So I listened to the audiobook at the same time, and I did think that was a really good way of doing it. Although I would say if you're going to do that, try and get the audiobook that actually has all of the text in it. There's like an abridged version or like a dramatized version, and it didn't map as well, so I quickly swapped to the one that had all the words and I could follow along with it. It's really creepy. It's kind of a Snow White and a Sleeping Beauty retelling, but with a little bit of a feminist twist. So creepy, and I really enjoyed the experience of reading that graphically and audibly at the same time. Okay, so those are the best books I read. Now let's talk about the most disappointing. Firstly, for ones that I read as text, I really need to think about how I categorize these better. Anyway, we have a few. The Law of Becoming, which is the fourth and final book of the Jaren series by Kate Elliott. These are kind of like sci-fi political romances. I think the whole book series is kind of confused about what it wants to be, and Kate Elliott has a habit, or at least I've only read a lot of her earlier books, but in the earlier books I've read by her, she has a habit of like writing these really sprawling plots that I feel like she kind of loses control of them. And she's really great at like looking at culture and really developing her characters, but the lack of plot is something I really struggle with, and the romance is not the best, or at least not to my taste. So there were parts of it I liked, but it was really long and drawn out, and it just didn't need to be. As well, I picked up Mislaid in Parts Half Known. I'm pretty sure lots of people are loving this. Let me look up the average rating. The average rating is 4.09, so this is a very unpopular opinion, but I just haven't been enjoying where this series has been going. So this is the 9th book in the Wayward Children series. Basically, we have all these children who have found portals through to these magical worlds, and then when they come back to our world, there's like a home and a school where they can stay and be around other people who are also wishing that they could find their doors again and go back to these magical worlds. Some of the earlier books in the series I absolutely loved, but the later ones I have felt very disappointed with. They just seem very unfocused. I personally don't feel like they're hitting the themes that they're attempting to address very well. But as I said, lots of people disagree with me and are totally relating and loving some of these later books, so I don't know. But I think there's only going to be a few more left in the series, so I'll probably finish it because I'm a completionist and maybe an idiot. I'm still hoping for a satisfying ending to the series, but I don't know if I'm going to get it. Anyway, the other disappointing thing I read in this category is The Memory Theatre by Karen Tidbeck. I had really loved Amatka by Karen Tidbeck, and so I was super hopeful for The Memory Theatre because it's kind of pitched as almost an Alice in Wonderland retelling. So it's this world where there's these adults who throw these luxurious parties, but they're also really violent and have tempers, and they don't remember anything that's happened in the past, or their memories are all out of order or something. And we also have these younger people who are their slaves or their servants, and when these younger people reach like maturity, these adults will torture them and kill them. And so obviously these younger people would like to escape, and we follow them as they escape to another world that is perhaps our own world. So there was a lot of things that I really liked in that concept, but the actual plot, I could never tell what it was about. And while I really loved some of the fairy tale atmosphere of the beginning of the story, and I also really like some of the bits we get of the adults being completely murderous and unhinged, like there were bits that I liked, but overall I still don't know what the story was about. And I'm so disappointed because I felt like there were some really good metaphors in there, but I just couldn't work out if there really was one, or if there's even a point to anything that was happening. I kind of think maybe there wasn't, and I just don't know what to do with that book anymore. I didn't have fun with it at all, unfortunately. Then the audiobook that was my biggest disappointment would be The Dreamers by Karen Thompson. I'm not good at remembering the details of books I didn't really like. So this one is about this world, kind of like an apocalyptic future, and it is worth noting that this was written before COVID. Basically, people start falling asleep and it's spreading like a pandemic, and there are some great insights in this book about what happens during a pandemic. There's a lot of things which you read, and knowing that this was written pre-COVID, you can see the author had a lot of insight as to how a pandemic might go down. But post-COVID, I just don't think those insights went far enough. And so I kind of wish that I had read this pre-COVID, in which case I probably would have been talking about this book all the time through COVID. But That's just not the way it happened. So in the end, I just think there were too many perspectives. It didn't really do anything with the whole dreaming aspect that it tried to allude to having some relation to the real world. And like all the different plot threads didn't really come together in any kind of satisfying way. And it again just felt like there wasn't that much point to it by the end. And then lastly, the graphic thing that disappointed me was Remina by Junji Ito. I have really loved some things by Junji Ito, and Remina is about this strange planet that the scientist discovers and names after his daughter, and then this planet just moves around erratically and anything it comes close to just disappears. And then when this planet starts coming towards Earth, people start connecting this planet with the girl that it was named after, and it gets quite twisted, but also in a way that I felt was just stealing a lot of ideas from Tomie by Junji Ito, or like rehashing them, and it did very little with the actual planet concept, which I think could have been cool, but it just didn't do it, and so it just wasn't that fun to read. Okay, so those are my best and worst books of the quarter. Now let's talk about my reading goals. So firstly, my goal is to read 100 books throughout the year with a stretch goal of 150, and currently I have read 113 books. Oh, but I've got to remember while I go through this that it's already partway through July, so I've got to take some books off. At the end of June, I'd read 107 books, so still well over 100. And I think if I look, I can see that 47% of the books that I was reading are graphic books, and then 53% are like non-graphic, so either text or audio, which I think means that I'm actually on track to read 100 non-graphic books by the end of the year, which the more I think about it is maybe actually my goal. And then graphic novels I just kind of read around the place for fun. Reading is always fun, but when I pick up graphic novels, I'm usually expecting less, or I'm picking them up because I know I don't have the focus to manage those other kinds of books. Anyway, the main summary is that I'm totally on track for this goal. So that's a win. Then I have... my reading goals are all quite confusing for this year. Then I have a few lists that I wanted to get through. So firstly, I was trying to get to TBR 0. I'm actually very close, and maybe I even made it briefly. But regardless, I have 2 books left to read on my physical TBR. So both of these I picked up for free, Foe from a little library, and then The Black God's Drums from my library's free bin. And honestly, I did have both of these, I think, on my TBR for June, maybe even May. Because of moving house, I have not gotten to either of these yet, but I think I'm going to reattempt to pick both of these up in August. That's my plan. Neither of these are very long, so I don't think it will take me much to get to TBR 0. The real challenge is, could I avoid buying any new books until I've read these 2? I'd kind of like to, just so that I could actually have a moment at full TBR 0 before I then buy some more books, because of course I don't really want to have no books to read. I just at one point had way too many books and felt overwhelmed, so I had a goal. And I kind of want to consistently keep my TBR pretty small so that I don't get overwhelmed again, and so that like when I pick up books that I'm excited about reading, then I read them while I'm still excited about them rather than holding on to them for ages. Then the second list I wanted to work on is Series 0. So I have here a series spreadsheet. I am not at Series 0, but to get to it, I now only need to read 11 books. 6 of those are from series that I've only just recently started, but also I have a plan to finish them over the next few months. 2 of them are new releases. One of them's over here. One of them is Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. I'm kind of having a meltdown about how thick this is, even though I'm seeing really great reviews of this. I'm now thinking I might have to read it via audiobook, because I just... in my current mental state and my current behind on my TBR and dealing with moving house, I don't think I can manage this. But because also actually next time I go back up to Auckland where we used to live, I need to return this book to the library, because this is from the library there, and I can't hold on to it for too long. So I don't know, I think I'm going to have to get the audiobook instead, and my library does not have the audiobook, or none of my libraries have the audiobook. Maybe I'll have to buy it. I haven't really worked that out yet because I have too many other audiobooks to read at the moment, but I will work that out. Another one is the third book in Every Generation by Kendara Blake, which is like a Buffy spin-off series that I was just feeling mediocre about, but I kind of want to finish it off. But also, again, none of my libraries have been getting the third book, so I'm a little bit conflicted because I didn't like that series enough to like buy the book either physically or audibly, and I think I really want to read it physically, so I'm kind of just waiting for some library to get it. I've just remembered I joined a new library the other day. Maybe they have it. They do have a lot of fantasy books, which is why I joined them. Oh, I'm pretty sure they only have the first and second book as well. It's been out for a while now, so I really don't know why they're not getting it, because they got the first two books really quickly. So I feel like that one's going to stick around for a while. And then the only other series on my list are ones from my Cosmere reread. So Stormlight Archive, I still haven't gotten to Rhythm of War. And I say reread, the only ones I'm kind of keeping on this list are the ones that I haven't read at all yet. So I've got Rhythm of War and also The Lost Metal that I need to read. And then also just that last book in the Age of Madness trilogy. So a lot of these trilogies I've either just started, or they're part of a longer read-along type thing I'm doing, or they're releases I'm just struggling to get my hands on. So like, I think even though I'm not at Series 0, and I have my doubts about whether I could actually ever get to like full Series 0, I'm still feeling like I'm not overwhelmed. Everything's under control, which is the main thing we want. So also, I wanted to get my Goodreads want to read list under 100, and I think at the end of Q1 I was really optimistic because I'd gotten it down to 99, and I was like, maybe I could go for a stretch goal of 60 by the end of the year. And with the whole moving thing, that has turned out to look fairly delusional. I'm currently at 98 though, so I still am under 100. I think I did go back over 100 for a while, then I've come under it. I did take a bunch of graphic novel series off the list and put them into my separate kind of system that I use for tracking series. So my Goodreads want to read list is mainly just standalones that I want to read. I am still trying to regularly put them on my TBR, but I just read less during June and July, so gotta do a catch-up period. But still, it's currently under 100, so I think I should be able to achieve this goal. Oh, and then 2024 releases, so I wanted to keep on top of those. As I said, there's just a couple that I've had problems with, but other than that, I'm doing pretty well at reading 2024 releases and getting my hands on them. Okay, then my next goal was to have more favorite books that I could rave about, and I'd kind of had a goal of like a distribution of ratings, and I wanted to have less than 5% 1 and 2 star books. If I look, I don't have any 1 stars, which is good, but I am at 6.4% 2 stars. And I think I also said I wanted to have any 1 and 2 star books should be DNFs, but I think I'm mostly doing that, except where they're graphic novels like Remina, which I think I gave 2 stars. If it's a graphic novel, I'll often just finish it because it's so quick to finish it. But other than that, I think I'm getting that. And then I think as well, I wanted to have 70% of my books be 4 and 5 stars. So I am at, oh, I gotta add these numbers together. Oh, and I'm realizing that I'm looking at this. This is all wrong because I forgot about July. Oh, if I take out July, actually, my 2 stars 5.6%. That's pretty close to 5%, like if I round down. But my 4 and 5% only comes to like 63.5%. So we're a little bit under the 70% goal, but still pretty good. So I think we're okay, especially because second half of the year I expect to be picking up a lot of new series that I'm expecting to really love, a lot of books that I have now like really culled that list down on like my want to read list. So I should be reading a lot more books that I'm loving and giving 4 and 5 stars, hopefully. I think actually I have a graph of my average rating each month, and you can see this year it has been like kind of trending upwards, which is what I was hoping for. As well, I kind of had a list of tactics I was attempting to get those rating percentages that I wanted, and one was that I should be reading 75% adult novels because I felt like YA novels were pulling down my average ratings. And if I look at demographics, I can see I'm actually only reading 65% adult books, and it is YA books that have the lowest average rating. So YA books still pulling down my average rating. But also, if I look at it, I actually only read 2 YA books in Q2, and both of those were off my physical TBR. So really, what we need to just be doing in the future is not buying YA books unless I'm like super sure that I'm going to love them. Okay, then lastly, I had a couple of stats goals. Firstly, I had one about the race of the authors I was picking up, just trying to read a little bit more diversely. So my goal is just to have less than 70% white or European authors. Actually, my long-term goal is to have like kind of my distribution of the races of authors to align sort of closer to New Zealand's ethnicity distribution. So more like 62% white or European authors, but 70% is like my stepping stone to get there. And I can see I didn't quite make it. As of Q2, I'm at 70.1%, so that's not bad, especially because I think so far, if I add in July, I'm actually at 69.8%, which would be just across the line. As well, I can see that it was April and May, I only read white authors. So I kind of dropped the ball during those 2 months, and then June I really pulled it back. So I think I just need to be aware, really, to make sure I don't fall into like that bubble of just reading books from a certain perspective. So I'm happy with my progress there. As well, I wanted to read more than 10% sci-fi because I've been wanting to read, like I've just been loving sci-fi, so I want to read more of it. And I think, where's the graph? I think I'm doing good at this. Yes. Oh wait, gotta take July off. I am at 13.3% sci-fi books. Still 72.4% fantasy, which I love fantasy, but maybe that's a bit too high. I definitely want to be moving some of that, I think, over to reading more sci-fi, but still 13.3% would mean I've met my goal. I think a lot of that was because of Murderbot, and maybe I also counted the Innkeeper Chronicles as sci-fi, even though it's a sci fantasy, whatever, I'm counting it. So I think overall, actually, I'm doing pretty good with my reading goals, even though we've been moving house and that's been disrupting everything. So let me know how you're going with your reading goals so far this year, and let me know what the best and worst books you read over the last couple of months were. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.